everybody, this is Gabe Estel. Welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo. I'm here with my co-hosts Dennis Levi Leach and Jonathan Getz. How's it going, guys?
Amazing.
Hey, all right. Right on. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to episode 101, or I guess 100.2, I guess if you want to call it that. Our last episode was proudly our 100th episode, where we are celebrating aspects of baseball and music that we appreciate. So
that we love.
Tonight, that we love. We're going to get into that. Some of it's nostalgic. Some of it is kind of commentary on the current state of the game or the music scene, and just things that we cherish and respect and admire. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Who wants to kick us off tonight?
I'll start.
Okay.
Yeah. So my next item is, and I guess this is item number 90, I think, in our list.
We got really far last time.
Is a concert I attended. This was back in 2002. And this is the middle of my days at Iowa State University. And so as a result, it was kind of my jam band heyday. I was very much wrapped up in Government Mule and Widespread Panic, etc. But I made a road trip with my then girlfriend, now wife, Betsy, down to Lawrence, Kansas, for a special show of Beck and the Flaming Lips. And at that time, I had been a huge Beck connoisseur for his entire career, and the Flaming Lips, admittedly, I was really only familiar with their most recent album, which was Yoshimi at the time. And so to jump out of this kind of ragged, no-frills jam band live music performance setting and into Beck and the Flaming Lips was a very formative experience at the Lead Center outside of Lawrence. And it was just the weirdness of the Flaming Lips and like the artistry of Beck just flipped this switch in me that started an expansion of musical horizons. And, there was a showmanship to it from both Wayne Coyne of the Flaming Lips and Beck that, I just wasn't used to seeing in a lot of the live concerts I had attended up to that point. I mean, there was almost a choreography to it. And then, of course, the Flaming Lips do their thing, their over-the-top thing, and then, Beck is doing his dancing, etc. And it was, it just kind of, like I said, it broke down these barriers for what I thought was cool to do on stage. That it didn't just have to be, like looking down at your guitar and shredding or whatever. And it was, something I would never forget. It was in my opinion, probably peak Beck in terms of his catalog. The mix that night was wonderfully distributed across. The album he was touring on was Sea Change. Also, Odelay was well represented. Midnight Vultures, Mutations, obviously Mellow Gold, and just the way he was able to move back and forth through all of those albums, and even doing things like covering the Flaming Lips' Do You Realize, which I believe it was the second time we had heard it that night, because the Flaming Lips also played it when they opened for him. The Flaming Lips were his backing band, I should have mentioned, during that tour. And so to hit it again, to play that song again, which was probably one of the most popular songs in the country at the time, oddly enough, was also broke down more barriers to say, there are no rules. It's okay to play a song twice in one night. And it was one of the best concerts I've ever seen, and we'll never forget.
Sounds like a little bit of a turning point, too, in terms of what you appreciate out of a live performance as well.
Oh, undoubtedly. Right. It also made me appreciate the front row of the balcony. which I realized is a choice seat because my wife can undoubtedly see, and and you can sit when you want to sit and stand when you want to stand. So
nice.
There you have it. It's the only time I've ever been to the Lead Center. That's it.
Nice. My wife went to that same tour, but in Chicago.
Oh, nice. Do you know what venue it was at in Chicago?
I want to say the Chicago Theater, but
Sure,
I'm not entirely sure about that. Yeah, it can be easily verified somewhere, but yeah, I think so.
Did you guys have any concerts that kind of changed you and in your musical appreciations in one format or another?
Gosh, that's a good question.
I can see the little thought bubbles above your heads.
Yeah.
Slowly building.
Yeah, I got the emoji with the hand on its chin right there. Yeah, it just appeared over my face. You know, I guess in 2006 I saw Marty Stewart, and actually the first time I saw Marty Stewart was with Levi in 1992 at the Sangamon County Fair.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like one of the first concerts I ever attended, dude.
Yeah, I could like where like parents were not right next to us the entire time. Yeah.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
where like it felt like
Fair.
we were on our own, basically.
I was like in 7th grade. You would have been like in 5th grade, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I at the time, you know, like 1992, I was like, I was like really into like Belle Biv DeVoe, you know, so like I wasn't really feeling Marty Stewart. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed myself and it was fun to hang out with Levi, but yeah, I saw him in 06 at a place called the Bottle and Cork, which is a really cool venue that's had some good artists pass through over the years. I assume it's still there. It's in Dewey Beach, Delaware, which is obviously a Delaware beach town. And yeah, it's outside, and it's kind of like basically sort of like a warehouse with like a wall missing. You know what I mean? Like it's got like how to describe it? It's kind of like a hangar, sort of, as well, like an airplane hangar. And it's I saw Marty Stewart there, and I got to meet him, and it was just cool. Like I was like, oh, you know, like. I had started listening to some country music, you know, but that like really opened me up to it again, you know, reintroduced it, I should say.
Sure. If I had to say one, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that like I never really wasn't open to it or like it turned me on to a new style, but like when I saw the Police at Bonnaroo, I was VIP, so it was like we were front row, and so I had never seen like an arena type like stadium band that close, and it just blew me away how good of a band they actually were, like musicians and stuff. Like, I mean, they could just play like radio hits all night long, but like they could also all really play their instruments really well too.
It's a different perspective being up close like that. I mean, obviously, but you know, I know what you mean. I've only been privy to that a couple times, and it is something to behold.
Yeah, it was pretty magical. You know, like you know, the start of the night, Sting is in his like cotton shirt and hemp pants or whatever.
Right.
And then by like the end of the night, like he had his like shirt ripped off and was like running around stage playing and like. It was just really good. They turned me on to like, I guess, appreciating bigger bands like that, because like a lot of times, you know, as people who are into music a lot, you can sometimes slag off big bands like that to where you're like, oh,
yeah, you take it for granted.
You take it totally for granted because it's just all you just hear their songs on the radio, and so you're just like, oh, whatever.
Right.
But when you actually get to see it that close and experience it, I was like, man, I really like the Police.
Right on. Nice. Yeah, that's it.
Sweet. Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If you want it to be.
I'm going to go to baseball right now. John Olerud. All right, I've always liked the helmet. Yeah, that's all I got. I always liked the helmet, John Olerud. Yeah.
Oh,
And
dude, that
also-
it was classic. Like every card, it seemed like they would try to make sure it was a shot of him with the helmet.
Yeah, he had like a brain aneurysm, like in like the 80s, and he
Is
just
that what
kept
it was?
Yeah, he just kept it on for superstitious purposes, you know.
Really?
And he
Yeah,
obviously
because
yeah.
that a brain aneurysm can't be affected by taking a ball to the head or anything, right?
Right. But like he kept it on, and
He was one of
obviously-
the last players to be able to do it. Like
At
they
the
like grandfathered him in or whatever.
Yeah, for quite a while I mean, I think most of his career he was the only guy fielding with a batting helmet on.
Levi, are you saying that they made it against the rules to do
I believe so now. Yeah,
really?
I believe you can't wear a batting helmet. And it wasn't just a batting helmet. He had the old school catcher's batting helmet almost, where it was
Right,
like,
yeah.
no ear
Totally.
flaps?
Gary Carter style. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but obviously now they have, or I shouldn't say obviously, but they have made those hats for pitchers that have extra padding.
I've seen those
in them, but
those
it's
are weird
obviously it's
looking.
far from a batting helmet or a catcher's helmet.
Those things that the pitchers wear are weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, just aesthetically. They're
It's
odd
very
looking.
strange. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're huge.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to get his starting lineup after we're done recording tonight.
Yeah.
I'm going to order it. I found it cheap. Yeah. So yeah, man, I've always just liked that the dude wore a batting helmet. It's out in the field.
It would always come up. Like every time you stumbled upon his card, you would be like,
Yeah.
oh, he's got his batting helmet on,
There
and
he
you
is.
would like have to like explain to your sister why he has a batting helmet
Yeah.
on or something. Yeah.
It was reliable. All right. It was.
Right.
It was.
Right.
It was something that was guaranteed. So
Yeah. That's a good one because it was just it was almost one of those things that you haven't thought about in a long. It's one of those things that you don't think about in a long time, and when you do, you're like, man, that was like a big part of my life when I was 11 years old. The fact that John Olerud wore a helmet.
I thought about that stuff quite a bit. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I'm going to take it back to the baseball too, man. I was going to mention that one of the things that was basically every game, I went to lots of games at Wrigley Field, and I know they probably had it at Busch Stadium in some form or in most stadiums across the MLB. But it was these little rock hard frozen chocolate dessert cups you would get. The guys would be like selling them out of like the cooler, walking up and down the aisles.
Mm-hmm.
And like some places they would be called like a chocolate malt, or some places it would be like chocolate ice milk.
Yeah.
You always do when you were getting a chocolate ice milk, it was like lower quality product.
Right.
They couldn't afford the malt
But
licensing.
the greatest thing was like you would get a wooden stick to eat it with because you're at a ball game, you know.
Like a
Yeah, it's
strep test stick.
Flat
Yeah,
wooden
and it was
stick.
just completely flat, like a wooden stick shaped like
Yeah.
a small boat paddle.
It was a very ineffective spoon. All right, it really was.
Because I mean, you know, most of the time they would break, or it would just. You would try not to get splinters on the end of your tongue because, like, the edges of them were never sanded.
Well,
was
that's why they
so
gave you two
hard
sides
you
to
got
work
it.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to wait like an inning for it to melt some to then scrape around and try.
You gotta work the perimeter.
Well, like, it was a complete pain in the ass, but it was literally the first thing I asked for every time we got to a baseball game.
Yeah, it's a solid treat because it lasts a while.
It does.
Yeah, and it stays cold. So it's a smart move.
I've seen in some more recent games like a lemon ice that they sell sometimes at Misty Park.
Yeah, that's like the trendy thing that has replaced it.
Right. So yeah, it is reemerged in a different form, but that sounds kind of paradoxical. Sorry, but reemerged in a different form. Anyway, sorry.
It's a reboot.
Yes. Only completely different. But yeah, I enjoyed those as well, Levi. They were always a treat. I didn't get them outside of baseball games, really.
No, yeah, they got like quickly replaced by the little helmets of ice cream that is pretty much the staple at most ballparks if they have ice cream now. Or
Sure.
if they have ice cream, it's like a frozen yogurt bar where you can like put whatever on it.
Right.
We had, I would always get a chocolate malt at the Elks Club in Springfield, Illinois.
Nice.
So whenever I think of a chocolate malt, I think of the Elks Club because my grandpa was an elk.
Nice.
Yeah. But in terms of like stadium treats, the all-time classic moment is, Gabe, when you and I went to Old County Stadium. Not but a year or two probably before it closed in the early 90s. And we sat next to,
I think.
94? Yeah, we sat next to a guy. We walked up, got tickets, and ended up sitting next to a guy with a 5-gallon bucket of peanuts. And he's like, dig in, boys. We're like, right on.
Yeah. Never mind any sanitary lack of
bring your own bucket day.
Yeah, right.
Like, just hold your T-shirt up in like a little bucket and I'll fill your shirt.
Right. Those were the days where you could bring a bucket of peanuts into a game.
Oh, yeah. That's when America was America.
That's right. God damn it.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Is it my turn then, I guess?
No, it's my turn already.
Oh, okay. All right.
Man, all right. So I'm going to flip back over to music now. And so this is 89, 80, 87. Number 87 favorite thing about music or rock and roll or baseball is my favorite record store. With all due respect to my old favorite record stores, it is also from Lawrence, Kansas. It is Love Garden Sounds. It's the name of the record store. And it is right on the Strip, Mass Street in Lawrence. And I managed to make it there. Every time I visit Lawrence, I'll stop in just to make sure there's not anything I need. And you walk through and Love Garden, and you have to be careful when you open the door, at least more so back in the day you did, not as much now, but you have to make sure you don't let out any cats. Because they have cats, and that's awesome. And we're very cat-conscious people, so we're very careful about that. And then you get hit in the face by both the new arrival section and some house music, not house music, but music that they're playing that is usually just like a little piercing and out of your comfort zone. In like a little dissonant, and it kind of keeps you on your toes, and but that's fine, and so you have to flip through all of the new arrivals that are there right when you walk in. Both the new arrivals, the new arrivals are to your left, and then the new used arrivals are to your right. And if I have like an hour, I'll go through every CD in both cases. And cats are usually lounging in the metal. We're usually lounged in the metal section, so it would be just like this strip of CDs, and the cat would just be strewn all the way across it. And
cats really dig Merciful Fate, huh?
Oh yeah. And you were invariably going to find 2 or 3 things you had to have, and still do. And it's got an owner who he lets me borrow used gear before I buy it or something like that, or he'll go upstairs to find a CD for me that he knows I'll like that isn't necessarily out on the floor, but it's just kind of an obscure little deal. And and we always make a trip on New Year's Day because they're like never closed. And maybe for a couple hours on Christmas they're closed. So we always go on New Year's Day, and I stock up on albums to help get me through the winter. And it's always a treat, and I can't encourage it highly enough. Love Garden Sounds, Lawrence, Kansas.
Sweet. Good deal. It's your second Lawrence reference tonight.
I know, right?
Right. Jeez.
LFK in the house.
Yeah. You You got Danny Manning crashing at your crib tonight or something? Jeez. All right. Anyway, good stuff. So now you guys got me going down a King Diamond Wikipedia rabbit hole. I brought up the Merciful Fate. I'm gonna have dreams about Danny Manning sitting in with King Diamond tonight. All right. Anyway, so my next one is pretty simple, baseball one. It doesn't really need much explanation because it's all visual. Obviously, I love Baseball Reference, as I know you guys do too.
Baseballreference.com.
Yes, baseball-reference.com. It's my favorite thing, one of them, and.
Should you define it for our listeners who might not be familiar?
Yeah. It's basically a Wikipedia for baseball, but it's all stats essentially, and it's just really well organized and extensive, and it lists things that like you always wanted to know, like salaries as well. Just it puts it all in one place. But specifically what I'm thankful for is the uniform number bubbles. I wouldn't like the site as much because I can go to other sites and get the stats, like it's not as enjoyable, but like, ESPN.com and MLB.com and Yahoo Sports, they've all got the stats, right? You can get the stats in hundreds of places. But the fact that they have those bubbles with the uniform that shows what uniform the player had when he played on that team, that makes the site to me. So,
right.
Namaste. Yeah.
It is pretty good because you'll be on there and you see a guy like, oh, this guy wore 9 for like the first 3 teams, and then then he had to change numbers when he went to another team, and then like as soon as he had another chance, he wore that old number again.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, you'll see. Yeah, you see the storyline, just played out in the numbers like that, or like somebody like you could tell like it was like a more well-known player who had a number most of his career, but like he was a September call-up, so he had to wear like 74, for like 1 month.
Right. Yeah. And I think that they even tweak don't they tweak the colors of the numbers?
Oh yeah.
Based on the year. Say if a team had a different color scheme, like the mid '90s Astros versus today's Astros, like it'll still reflect those colors when they wore the uniform.
Yeah, they'll have that ugly ass like Diamondbacks purple and green. They'll do it. Yeah. So bravo, the guys behind all of those sites, people behind all those sites know what they're doing. They made the site I wanted, when the internet first emerged.
Yeah. And I like how they haven't changed the design much. And as a web designer and developer, that's kind of a unique statement, but it's very no frills. It's like, how do we get this information to you as efficiently as possible?
Yep.
And it's admirable that they've stuck to their guns with it.
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't need to have a bunch of flash,
Literally
and figuratively. One
of my favorite features is the transactions page for each player to see how they navigated through their career, and maybe who is that guy that who did a guy get traded for is always my favorite.
Right.
Because then you can go down a rabbit hole to see like, oh wow, there's a guy on the Tigers today who is only like 3 trades removed from Jack Morris or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been terrible for my productivity. Let's put it that way. Baseball Reference, right? Just like King Diamond's Wikipedia page, all right? But I'm like, I want to know the history of Roadrunner records now, So,
or John Olerud's Baseball Reference page,
right. So yeah,
John Olerud. I'm guessing. What do you think it was? Like a 310 career hitter?
I just looked it up a minute ago. You're aiming high, but he wasn't.
Am I too high?
He does have a good career average.
Yeah, is it above 300?
No, it's like 295.
Ah, damn.
Yeah, he put together a good career, dude. He hit like 360 one year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For the Blue Jays or the Mets?
For the Blue Jays, 93. He was a beast in 93. World Series team.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Good for Johnny. We should have had Johnny on tonight.
Well, so, cool.
BaseballReference.com.
My next one is going to be, it was a show that was on CMT, and I'm trying to remember the years. It was like early 2000s, I believe, and it was called CMT's Wide Open Country was the name of the show. And it would be on like later in the evening, usually like 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And they would play like BR549 and like Steve Earle, and like I want to say I saw like a Sunvolt video on there before. Whoa. And it was this really, and like so like CMT and TNN were like always on in my house in one way or another. Back when my parents were still married, it was like my dad constantly was like, he had his finger on the pulse of the Nashville sound.
He was watching that little Muppet, Shotgun Red, dude. Do you remember that little fucker?
Oh, yeah, Ralph Avery and Shotgun Red, yep.
Yeah. Yes, if you don't know what we're talking about, just Google that, all right?
All right, I will.
Google the Shotgun Red Muppet that hosted a show on TNN.
Yeah, Ralph Avery was like a celebrated like radio and TV host for like years, and then in the 80s they paired him up with this puppet. I'm sure at that point he's like, oh great, I gotta have a fucking puppet sidekick. Like,
Steve Hall and Shotgun Red.
Yeah.
That was the puppeteer, I believe. His name,
I recognize this guy.
Yeah, it was, that guy was on the TNN Nashville network all the time.
Yeah, but that's cool, dude. CMT Wide Open Country. I vaguely remember, the font, Yeah. Huh, cool.
It was just really neat. It was like one of the only ways I had access to like that kind of music, really.
Sure.
You know what I mean at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not pretty forward thinking of them to do that. I guess kind of like what MTV would show around that time. What was it, 120 minutes or?
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
just
to get 120 minutes for CMT.
Yeah, some of the more indie stuff out there.
Right.
Yeah, admirable. All right, moving on.
Just lastly, on that point, sorry. Shall we say that CMT's Sunvolt was MTV's 120 Minutes My Bloody Valentine, right? Anyway. Hold
on. So I'm gonna switch over to baseball now. And mine, actually, Levi, you'll identify with this, I'm sure, is my next one is favorite thing, listening to Cubs games on the radio. When I, and this is probably just a little bit less of a nostalgic memory for me than watching Cubs games on TV, but listening to Cubs games on the radio when I was working construction by myself. My dad has a construction company in Springfield, and I would work in the yard, which means I was like just out there by myself, like repairing things, like repairing concrete forms and such. So I would have a transistor radio just blaring through the yard, and I would just throw it in a wheelbarrow. And Pat Hughes and Ron Santo would ride along with me as I made my rounds around the yard and repaired things and moved things from one bend to another or whatever. And so this is when I was like from like 16 to 18 and 19. And the Sammy Sosa and Kerry Wood and Mickey Morandini and Mark Clark, and just the act of, I wasn't necessarily a Cubs, like an ardent Cubs fan. I would root for them when I listened to them, but like my heart didn't hang on it, like I'm sure yours does.
Right. Yeah.
And but I would still be taken up in it, and but just like zoning out, sweating away, and And then I would go stick my head in the ice block cooler during the 7th inning stretch, and I mean, they were really hellish days because they were very, very hot in the summer. And but looking back at them, I recall them fondly, and just hearing Pat Hughes' voice, or the late Ron Santos, is really takes me back to that time, and kind of I can get a sunburn just hearing those voices. So yeah, Cubs games on the radio in the summer.
Nice.
Classic for sure.
Sweet. Oh, is it my turn? Or
yes?
No, is
yes,
it okay?
Yeah.
Well, Levi was talking earlier about he got to see some bands, bigger bands, up close. And this is on a similar note. On a handful, well, come to think of it, only twice, but one time was really special, and it was it's certainly in my top 5 concerts if I ever made such a list. Seeing an arena artist play a smaller venue is something that's really cool, and special. And in 2003 at the Vic in Chicago, which for those listeners who haven't been there, it's it's probably about, I don't know, maybe 1,500 people, 2,000. The balcony's small and the floor's pretty small too. I got to see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers there, which was it was amazing. I don't like to use the word amazing, but it was amazing. It was great too because I was right on the best spot too of the Vic. Like, they've got that railing that, like, there's the floor, and then you walk up a step or two, and there's another floor and a railing, and then the bar's like a few feet behind that. I was right on that railing, like dead center. So it was like best spot in the house.
Sweet.
It couldn't get any better, And they played for Petty and the Heartbreakers, kind of an atypical set list, Like, they played some covers and some deeper cuts. They did, like, Stranger in the Night, which is awesome. You're not going to hear that, on most Petty tours. And for a radio song, it was still powerful to hear. Like, the crowd sang "Learning to Fly" a cappella. It was something else. So to see Petty and the Heartbreakers, I'd just seen them a few months before at Riverport, and then to see them, a few months later at a place like the Vic is really something. They did like a 5 or 6 night residency at the Vic, so I was fortunate to go to one of those.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How'd you snag a ticket? I imagine they were in high demand.
They were in high demand, yeah. In 2003, like, the face on them was still only like $40 or $50.
Those were the days, man.
Yeah, right, huh? Even though that was like 16 years ago. Yeah, I think I just got lucky. I just got lucky online. There wasn't anything special. It just, I got online at the right time. Yeah.
I guess it helps if all 5 or 6 shows went on sale at the same time. It would help alleviate a lot of that push.
Right. I think I was still living in Macomb, and then came up to Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah, I hadn't moved to Chicago yet. So
it's funny you mentioned where you were at the venue, because that's where I was for Pearl Jam at the Vic.
All right, I forgot you went to that. Yeah.
What was that, like 06 or 07 or something? Yeah. You're right. I mean, to get that step up on a rail, so you're just like, you aren't breathing down anybody's neck, is perfect.
Yeah, nobody's blocking your view. Like, it's great. Yeah. It's as good as it gets.
Yeah. Is that the was that the High Grass Dogs tour that they made a DVD for, where he played the Fillmore, I think?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the same tour or not.
Okay.
I know they broadcast the show I went to on XRT. I've got a bootleg of it.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
Nice.
Very nice. Well,
yeah. That's a choice one.
Yeah. Next on my list, I'm gonna talk a little bit about something that all 3 of us grew up with, and that was Springfield, Illinois minor league baseball.
But which team?
So yeah, we'll run down a little history. I remember obviously first going to Springfield Cardinal games when they were actually a Cardinals affiliate, and then after that, I want to say I don't know the timeline, but I remember we had the Springfield Sultans for a while. Do you remember them?
Mm-hmm.
Then we had the Springfield Capitals for a while after that.
Sultans were the last big league affiliate. The Capitals were like an independent league, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then now we have the Springfield Sliders. But yeah, man, it's still really fun. If you get a chance to, like, whenever you're in town, if you guys come back to town during the summer, it's still a really good time. And it's super cheap and it's like kid friendly. And it's just, I don't know, there's just something to be said about the quaintness of minor league baseball or you know, non-pro baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing more Sultans games than Cardinals games. I guess that kind of hit my prime age a little bit easier. And oddly enough, I stumbled upon a brand new Springfield Sultans hat online that they started reproducing out of the blue. I'll have to dig up the website, but yeah, and some big leaguers did go through that stadium. I forget exactly who right now, but
Todd Zeal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Todd Zeal. And then I was going to say, I know Albert Pujols, when he was a Peoria Chief, I think, came down and played against the Springfield team then.
No kidding.
Because at one time, the Peoria Chiefs weren't Cubs affiliates, they were Cardinals affiliates. And that's another interesting thing about minor league baseball, about how they can just, like, switch it around, you know.
It's always confused me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you live in the town where the minor league team plays, you're like, well, shit, I guess we're Twins fans now.
Yeah, right. It's so strange. And is that Robin Roberts Stadium, Lamphere Park, or Robin Roberts Field?
Robin Roberts Field.
So Robin Roberts, who pitched for Lamphere, or but also the Phillies, right?
I know. Yeah, in the majors, he was big on the Phillies, and I want to say he did play at Lamphere. Yeah,
because that's where Lamphere High School, the high school team plays, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, do you guys have any memories? Do you remember going to any games?
Yeah, I saw the famous chicken there.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the dude's Max Pacton? Right?
I didn't see Max Pacton.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I only went to a couple games, you know, like I went to maybe 2 or 3 Cardinals games, and that's it. So I don't think I ever went to a Sultans game, so I don't have a lot to offer. I remember Dimitri Young was playing when I went to see them. It would have been near the Cardinals, the end of their time in Springfield. They're like the only games I remember like vividly going to. Yeah.
Yeah, the team now is not minor league affiliated, but it is like it's considered like a collegiate league. It's a summer collegiate wooden bat league is
okay.
Specified as. So like basically college kids from all over the country kind of get picked to be put on these teams in all these random towns.
Right.
And then they come stay, and you know there's host families that host them for the summer.
Yeah. On a similar note, and actually it's kind of the cream of the crop for it. I have seen a few Cape Cod League games when I vacationed out there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much like what Levi's described. That the Cape Cod one's probably like the most elite one, like in terms of just, I don't know why that's the case, but you know, like some of the best college players in the country are there every summer. Yeah.
I always have intentions of going to like the University of Kansas or KU baseball games, or even just some high school baseball games, but I never follow through on it.
Right.
And along the lines of what you're describing, Levi, I mean, it would be a good time. I mean, it's just bleacher seats and,
yeah, and I
get
mean,
in for a few bucks. And
everything is really affordable in Springfield, at least. Like all the concessions, and they even sell, you could buy jerseys, like game worn jerseys, and they're only like
Wow.
$50-$60.
Nice.
There is a new Chicago team, relatively. I think this will maybe be like their second or third year, called the Chicago Dogs. They've got like a new nice stadium out by Rosemont. I haven't been there yet, but it's a really good looking stadium. Yeah. So independent league.
Yeah. Yeah, we should all make an effort this next spring to get out and visit our non-MLB teams.
Definitely.
All right. So I'm going to switch over to music now, and one of my favorite things is a thing that is no longer, and it was the RDO streaming music service. And it was the first streaming music service I ever signed up for, and it represented a bygone era of streaming music done right. It was one of the reasons I favored it over the then industry leader of Spotify was because it was easy to create a true album catalog, and at the time Spotify wouldn't even let you add an album to as a whole. You would just have to create these playlists. That where you would bullshit. Levi's like, this is why I don't. Yeah.
This is just cementing Levi's case right here.
Yeah. So, but with RDO, you could go down. It was also easier than it's. And by the way, it's been dead for 3 years at least, and I still consider it way better than any option out there. And I currently have Apple Music. I used to have Spotify, and I'm familiar with Google Play a bit. Gabe, I know you use that. And RDO is still like, wow, if only someday these companies could realize what RDO did, then they would achieve something quite great in streaming music. And because it let you go down this like related artist rabbit hole, and you could. And that's not nearly as easy with Apple Music. It's hey, here's some artists you might like. Hey, we saw you you listen to the Black Crowes. Well, let us tell you about the Black Crowes deep cuts. Oh, really? Yeah, please tell me more. Please educate me. But with RDO, it was really simple. I mean, you would be listening to an artist and you would just see related artists, and you would click on their name and you would see their catalog, and it was as simple as 2 clicks to start playing a related artist. And also, very uniquely at the time, and Spotify does this now, is that you could just watch what your friends were listening to, and your friends would see what you're listening to, and it's not like a status thing. It's kind of a community thing to to see that, and like be kind of comforted to log in at 8 a.m. and Gabe, I could see what you were listening to at work or whatever,
absolutely.
And it's like, even though you wouldn't talk to these people on a real regular basis, you still got kind of an idea of their frame of mind. And Gabe, if you were going on a big King Diamond kick, I might be a little concerned at times, but but most importantly, RDO made it really easy to find brand new music, because you could just endlessly scroll by release date, and major label releases were right alongside indie and self-release music. And a grid. It was just this never-ending grid of all these albums that were released on whatever it was at the time. It was New Music Tuesday, and it was you could judge albums by their cover, and just you could test drive a dozen different albums so easily. And now Apple Music is if you go check out the new music, and it's like the Taylor Swift album that was released 2 months ago, and it's like, really, this is what you're showing me here,
right?
So RDO was very democratizing with all of that, and as a result, I never had an era of listening to music where I found more new music than I did in those few years that I was subscribed to RDO, and I would wager to guess that it was, in the history of music, it was probably it enabled more music to be easily found than any other medium in the history of music.
Yeah. Yeah, it was God, it was short, but it was such a sweet run. Yeah, it was really good. It kind of like turned me on. That's kind of when I started getting into, and I still am, some of the more kind of chill ambient electronic music, you know. There was just some people with like some really good taste out there, you know, that like I followed that that were really into that genre, and it stuck with me. So that's kind of like the piece of RDO I carry with me. But yeah, it was really well tailored to your interests, but also it opened you up to discovery too.
Yeah, because couldn't you, if you were listening to an album, you could see who else had that album, say, in their collection. Right, if it was public, they would volunteer it to be public.
Yeah.
And then, you could go down a rabbit hole of other listeners to find somebody with similar tastes that you wanted to understand better.
Yeah. Yeah, you could see. It was kind of like seeing when you go over to your friend's place, or if it was like, somebody you first started dating, you'd want to look at their music collection.
Yeah, or the friend of a friend, It was like, whoa, this is alien territory. Yeah.
Right. And you're like, you'd see the collection and you'd be like, oh, this guy's got to be all right, I mean, look at this. Yeah. So yeah, it was a good site, man.
Yeah. Those were the days.
I still have a little piece of RDO with me. It's one of my Rokus has the RDO button on the remote.
No kidding.
What's great
That's
is if
funny.
you still hit it, it like tries to pull it up, and it's like RDO doesn't exist.
Yeah, the app was on my phone for a while, like after the site shut down, and it always brought a little bit of a tear to my eye.
Right.
Yeah, just couldn't delete her.
Yeah. I still remember like the final days, and just I had to take efforts, I think, to output my not the collection of music, but just the list, like an Excel file of what I had in there, so that I could reference it and go add it to my next streaming service.
Same here. Yeah.
21st century problems.
Yeah. Right. Levi's like, just buy a fucking record. All right.
Throw a goddamn record on. I don't remember who goes after Jonathan?
Gabe.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yep.
Well, the next one, this man is an institution. Eddie Trunk, I love the guy. I like the fact that there's somebody out there that's like, hey, I'm gonna talk about White Lion, right?
So who's Eddie Trunk?
Oh, sorry.
For those
not in the know, Eddie Trunk is a radio host. He started out as a record executive. He was with Megaforce Records, I believe, in the 80s when he was really young. He signed Ace Frehley, Frehley's Comet. Yeah. He was on Megaforce in the 80s, and then since then he's been on radio. And then he was on a great show that was on VH1 Classic for a number of years called That Metal Show with Don Jameson and I forgot Jim Florentine, a couple comedians.
That was a good show.
Yeah, it was a great show. And that's kind of like what got me into him. I always knew who he was. I had heard the name. And he's got another show now called Trunk Nation on Access, but I have to admit I haven't watched it. But, I listened to his podcast, and he's got a serious show. He's got a daily show. He's made such a cool career out of hard rock and heavy metal. And there's really very few people that can do that, where they could stick to that. Like, I think Ricky Rackman, covers NASCAR now, that's like the closest thing. So it's, I've tried to get him on the show. He fortunately was kind enough to reply to my emails and said, he would like to, but he just can't right now. So someday we're going to have Eddie on this podcast. Mark my words. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. If I met him, I'd probably want to talk to him for 12 hours. You know. So yeah. So yeah, he's a fountain of knowledge. And I think that, you know, he talks about a lot of artists that are like kind of maligned, you know, as well, you know, like a lot of the quote unquote hair metal stuff. Like he gives it its due, you know, and reinforces that it's fun and that it's you know, good is good. So I saw an interview once where DJ Quick, who's one of my favorite hip hop artists really, he was talking about how he like loved Duran Duran, you know, like, and he's like, good is good. You know,
right on.
So
right on.
yeah, and so and I love me some Quick. So Eddie Trunk's got the same thing. Yeah, good is good. It doesn't matter if it doesn't always have to be smart. It doesn't always have to be you know,
Your taste
polished.
even.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. If anybody hasn't seen that metal show, I recommend it because, you know, I appreciate metal, but I don't listen to it on a regular basis. And but just to watch it, you can get absorbed by it, and just by their love and their knowledge and their appreciation of it, and their, you know, these discussions, these roundtable discussions that they would have, and they, you know, the guests and the audience's appreciation, and it's hard not to get wrapped up in it, even though you might not have any idea who it is they're talking about,
Right.
and have never listened to their music, and that there's a lot to be said for that you can do that with a subject and really hook people with it, even though they aren't familiar.
Yeah. So Eddie Trunk,
Good
keep
stuff.
doing what you're doing, buddy.
Then come on the show.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
Next up on my list is kind of a weirdly unique item, but it's one that every time I would get one, it would just flood my senses, and that's anytime back in the day when you would freshly open a new cassette or a CD, the smell that they like gave. And I don't know,
Yeah.
but like it just takes me back to like birthdays and Christmases and like new album release days and like I don't know.
And that smell stuck around too, man. You
It
know,
did,
like
yeah.
the smell of the cassettes. Yeah, I can remember how, and they smell different a little bit. Like my Pink Floyd "Momentary Lapse of Reason" cassette smelled different than my Whitesnake cassette.
Yeah,
You know,
it was like
and
the
it smelled
different companies, probably the different chemical makeups.
It
of
smelled
all.
different than Hysteria. Hysteria had a distinct smell to it. Yeah, I know what you mean, dude. I was just thinking about that the other day. Yeah, God.
So are we just plain weirdos, Jonathan, or do you?
You know, I get what you're talking about. It doesn't quite stick in my brain like it has for you. Did you have a special tool to open your cassettes or your CDs?
No, typically it was probably like scissors.
Yeah,
like
right.
Trying to like get along the edge of the cassette tape, trying to like get the
Yeah,
seal.
right.
Do you remember for a while there, up until probably like 93 or so, they would put not just the cellophane, or no, this was probably when they still used the long boxes, that they would put the that like, it was like almost like a tiny nasal strip of silver sticker around just one edge.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that thing was
yeah.
impenetrable. Like
Right.
this was before Goo Gone, and it was impossible to get the goo off of this thing. It was like a special security sticker that they would put around one edge. It was just like maybe like a centimeter thick. And then they stopped doing that, I think, after they just started using cellophane around the whole thing.
Yeah, they always. I mean, I don't know. I don't really buy CDs anymore, but remember, they always seem to have that top sticker that would have the name printed on it.
That
Like the
too, yeah. They
artist and
switched
the
to that.
album.
That's
Oh,
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, though, I was in a record store in Denver, Colorado in around 2001, and I saw a guy do a trick that I'd never seen before, and it was a CD that didn't have the cellophane on, but it still had that sticker across the entire top of the CD. And he lifted up the hinge on the bottom left, and he just flipped it open.
Yeah.
To take the CD in and out. So it was like the store sample, so they could keep it sealed. And then after I saw that, I was like, oh, that's how I'm going to open my CDs from now on. I'm gonna flip it open from the hinge, and then it's so much easier to peel off that sticker.
You learned that trick, because I remember your shit always looked a lot better than mine, you know, right? So
remnants of stickers on the cases and shit.
Getz must know something. I don't know. You know? It's
there was a guy in Denver. He showed me the way.
Right.
It was a John Hammond CD called Southern Fried.
Nice.
That I saw it on nearly 20 years ago. I'll never forget, obviously.
Kids nowadays are like, what the hell are they talking about? Opening a CD. It's like, what?
This is the shit we love, man. But yeah, the smell of them.
They had like a distinct smell, and it would be like, the only thing I could think of is like the different pressing plants and companies would have different formulas for all the different plastics and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, you would just get them and be like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's
Right
on. Let's do one more tonight, guys, and then we'll take her home after that.
Sure, yeah. We're just about out an hour now. So I will. My next one is a concert I saw back in. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the year. Gabe, it was with you, and it was a concert at Pitchfork Festival, and it was we went to Pitchfork Festival, correct?
Right,
This was probably around 07.
It was a little later than
maybe
that.
2011, maybe like 2011,
right around there.
Phosphorescent. We walked into Pitchfork, and Phosphorescent was the next band up on stage, and up to that point, I was only familiar with Phosphorescent's most recent album. I'd been listening to it, a bit off and on in the month maybe leading up to the show, and it was just like a perfect summer day in the city. We were in Chicago. It was fairly hot and very sunny, and we kind of parked ourselves next to the soundboard, and it was right. The Phosphorescent set was right in the middle of the afternoon. Obviously, just after we walked in, and when I can still hear it echoing, the sound from that day, and kind of being there and just sweating a little bit, and and smelling it, and as a result, listening to that album. And afterwards I listened to that album quite a bit. Just kind of, it transports you back to that moment, and a really nice summer afternoon where at the time you're hot and you're kind of uncomfortable, but that you're seeing good music, you're going to see more good music, and so you're in a pretty good mood regardless. And it's just one of those moments where all of the senses kind of collect, and they don't soon let go of a moment like that. And feel fortunate to experience it, and to be able to cue up that album again and revisit it and kind of transport yourself back to that time and place. So yeah, Phosphorescent live at Pitchfork.
Very nice.
Cool. Yeah, it was a good time. Glad you enjoyed your stay here in Chicago, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Gave the city a ringing endorsement there.
Thank you for having us.
Right, yeah. Cool. Levi, go ahead, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, it would be you, Levi.
I think technically it's you, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to talk about. Dang it, where did it go on my list? An item that, this would have been probably like 1988, 87, 88. And at this point, I'm 6, 7 years old, and I didn't know it, but I was actually Busta Rhymes at the time. I was Topps was like, Levi, here's the cards. I'm like, give me some more. They're like, Levi, here's like sticker collectible books with like sticker albums. I'm like, give me some more. They're like, okay. And they dusted off these things that they used to make in the mid and late 60s called Topps baseball coins. And you would get them in a little pack, not necessarily a wax pack, but like a little sealed pack. And they would be like kind of like baseball cards, but they were like little metal coins with like a little curled up lip around the edge. And the back would have a little bit of stats or would say something, and the front would have their picture and their name. But it was like, you know, how hard up was I as a kid that I couldn't get enough baseball, that I'm like, the cards aren't enough, the sticker albums aren't enough, I needed some other little baseball tchotchke. So give me some Topps baseball coins. Do you guys remember them at all? Did you have
looking at them? You provided this link in the Google Doc, and it helps rekindle the memory of them. Yeah, I did have some of these. This was 3 coins in every pack. Do you remember how much they cost?
No, I remember. I think they were a little bit more than actual baseball cards, but I can't. I'm not positive. I know the ones I had were like 87, 88, because I distinctly remember like Canseco and like Alan Trammell.
They have Dale Murphy, Jack Morris, and Tim Wallach on the box.
Right, there you go. Some studs.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that probably didn't stick around that long, right?
No, they weren't really super popular. I think they only made them for a few years once they like reintroduced them. Because you can find on eBay like the ones from, well, I mean, you can find them all, the ones they made, but like some of the ones from the 60s are a little bit collectible, like, you know, with like Hank Aaron and stuff on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, gosh, you know, this is something that, my last one here, it's not something I've witnessed a lot, but it's a trend that I'm totally for. It seems like about 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of older bands celebrated the anniversary of albums by playing them in their entirety, right? And I think this is a good way to break kind of the mold of the very static kind of standard hits set list. Obviously, you can still satisfy the fans that come to hear those songs. I mean, they still have time to play those songs. But I like the fact that some bands are doing this. I assume they maybe enjoy it a little more, too, because maybe musically it's a little bit challenging because there's songs that they have to dust off that they've never played live or that they haven't played in a number of years. So it's definitely a trend that I support. I've only seen it. I saw Kiss do a live in its entirety, which was good, but they a lot of those songs were kind of already in the repertoire anyway. But like for instance, like I missed it, but like Aerosmith did Toys in the Attic in its entirety a few years ago, right? Like maybe 10 years ago, and I really regret not seeing that. Because if I were to see Aerosmith today, I would enjoy it, I'm sure, and I still kind of do want to check them off the list. But I don't want to hear like songs from the Armageddon soundtrack and Get a Grip, you know. So yeah, that would have been cool. So, and you know, I was just at Riot Fest and Wu-Tang did 36 Chambers. The Flaming Lips did Yoshimi in its entirety. So I'm all for it. I think it's a good thing to do.
I'm trying to think if I've seen anyone that has done that. I'll have to. Jonathan, have you seen anyone do a whole album?
I don't think so. One of the ones I kick myself over not seeing was when Pearl Jam unannounced did No Code in its entirety in the Quad Cities, right?
Yeah,
They just sprung into it. Yeah, so it wasn't out of the question that I could have gone.
And then they did Yield in Milwaukee.
Yeah, man. See,
that's the best. That's as good as it gets, because those are unannounced, even.
Yeah,
you know?
and imagine being there and like, okay, first song, hey, cool, right on, sometimes. And then the second song, like, oh, okay, hell. And then the third song, Who You Are, and you're like, whoa, shit, they're doing it. And to have that just overcome you, I think would be very intense and kind of puts it on a different plane than these tours that, Gabe, you're kind of describing more of these tours that are centered around like the 20th anniversary of some record.
Sure.
And yeah, there is a lot of that going on, isn't there?
Yeah. So yeah, I welcome it. You know, I think it's a good way for older bands to I don't know, to be a little more adventurous. You know,
I did see one band. Sorry, Levi. I saw Fu Manchu do "The Action As Go" in its entirety.
20th anniversary
at the Record Bar. Yeah, and I picked up the dual colored vinyl. Yeah. So I think that's the only one. Okay.
There's been a lot that I missed. I mean, last year Gomez came through town and did "Bring It On" in its entirety.
Yeah.
That would have been really good.
Yeah. So yeah, I regret not hitting up a few of them. But yeah. So good stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, want to thank everybody for sitting in.
I think we got around maybe like 10 or 12 in. We did pretty good on this one.
Yeah. A little more economical tonight. So yeah, want to remind everybody you can follow us on Instagram and the Twitter at RockNChew. That's N as in No Code that Pearl Jam played in Moline of all places. I like the fact that they went to a really small market. You know, I mean.
Yeah.
You know, that's
although at the same time I felt kind of bad for all the fans who had never seen him before, and they're like, you know, they just want to hear, you know, like Black and Even Flow, etc. And then they play this probably like the least popular album from the repertoire in its entirety.
I don't feel bad for any of those people, no. But
yeah, I shouldn't say I feel bad. I just, you know.
Yeah. No, they expand their palettes. But yeah, so check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also, like us on Facebook. You can also find every Rock and Roll Shin-Soo episode at rockchew.com. You can listen to us on YouTube or any of your favorite podcast apps. So yeah, check us out and leave us a review. Tell your friends. And until next time, we'll see everybody and we can finish up this list. Take care.
Peace.